let's start with the Big Red Show. This is a platform where we get sort of top leaders slash entrepreneurs like yourself from around the world to talk to them about their life journey. So we'll start with Kristin back in the US. We'll start with your high school journey, your college journey, and then, of course, moving forward to Saathi Pads and all the wonderful work you're doing in India. So to begin with, Kristin, why don't you tell us something a little bit about yourself? Where are you from? Where did you go to high school? And your journey. I mean, who was Kristin as a 14-year-old, and how did your sort of journey begin in high school? So if you could give us a little snippet about your family, about your background, and then we'll begin towards your college journey after that.
Cool. Okay. So I was born and raised in New York City, and I went to an all-girls school. And I guess in end of middle school, I got really interested in robotics. And so that was kind of the major activity I was involved in high school. And that's how I knew I wanted to go into engineering. And that was kind of a little bit of a strange, I think, path to take, because a lot of people were more interested in maybe being a doctor, a lawyer, or something like that. So we had to get a lot of support kind of from around the school and from parents and things like that. But we had one of the few all-girls teams, robotics teams in the city. So we were really excited kind of to talk about girls in STEM and things like that. So that's kind of where everything started in terms of my interest in engineering. And then that carried through college. And I was really excited about robotics because I was thinking about how robotics could help people moving forward. And at the same time, like when I was at college, I went to MIT. I discovered, I guess, that robotics kind of at this point was more about the programming and the software side of things, and that wasn't so much of my interest. So I also was looking at other ways that engineering could impact people. And I had also discovered Amy Smith while I was in high school. And I saw one of her TED Talks on YouTube. And I thought that was really, really interesting because basically she works in developing countries and is working on developing technologies that are based around the community, and she co-develops the technologies with the community as opposed to bringing in some kind of technologies that you just develop in a lab and then kind of try to put in real life. And so that was something which I thought was a really great way to impact people. And yeah, I think that kind of leads me to where I am today in terms of...
A little bit more about your high school. I mean, you said that you were, of course, interested in robotics. You went to an all-girls school. Take us through that. I mean, it seems that from the beginning, you were always interested in hands-on experience with engineering, and you didn't just want to work on the programming side of things and sort of all of that. So what was like your passion project in high school? I mean, I always use this phrase that, okay, you have to be in today's world for young high schoolers who would watch this video as well, that you have to be a jack of all but a master of one. So Kristin, back in high school, what would you say was sort of your capstone project or something that you really put in a lot of time and effort in before you joined MIT?
Yeah, so I think it's definitely being on the robotics team. So I'm not sure if people are familiar with the first robotics program, but it was basically like a team. It's like a sports team, but you're doing engineering, and they kind of designed a challenge every year, and so we had to learn the rules of the challenge each year, and then we had 6 weeks, which was called build season, where we really got into, okay, what is our strategy? What kind of robot are we going to build? We have to get all the parts, put it together, and then we have to ship the robot off to the competition site because everyone only gets 6 weeks. And so you have to be creative with bringing together your resources. So it was actually more than just the building and engineering. It was also, we had to raise money in order to buy additional parts and things like that. And we had to submit applications for the awards. And so there were kind of so many different components. It was almost like running a little company. But I don't think I totally understood that aspect at the time because it was all in the context of this competition. But I do like that idea that you're kind of a jack of all trades and master of one, because I love to, play in the orchestra, play trumpet in the orchestra, and, get involved in other activities as well. But I think my main passion was in robotics, and I spent the majority of my time in that.
Okay. Wow. Great to know. So, a girl from New York City, why did you, I'm sure the kind of experience you already had in high school, you were looking at a few colleges moving forward. Tell us a little bit about, and I know you went on to graduate as a mechanical engineer. Just run us through, is that something that was predetermined, or was MIT like your top choice always, or were there universities like Caltech or Stanford or other colleges you were looking at as well at that point of time?
Yeah, I did apply. I think we were recommended to apply to something like 8 schools or something like that. So I did apply to others, and it's like have a couple that are that you're likely to get into, and then others that might be a reach and stuff like that. So typical college application advice. But I think for me, what helped me decide which one to choose was really the visits. So visiting the colleges, not just the ones where they're like, this is the campus and all of that, but the ones where after you get in and you get to spend like a day or a weekend at the school, the pre-fresh weekend, I think it was.
Yeah.
So that was where it was, I got a chance to meet the other students and see what, even the ones that were, that got in as well, like you could still get a sense of, what the class was going to be like. And I think that's what really sold me on MIT. I just love that there were a lot of kids that had also done robotics as well. Maybe that's one bias, but I also found that they were just really down to earth people, and they were just really friendly. So I was really excited to be part of the MIT community that way, but also some of the resources and programs that they offered. I thought there was a lot of diversity in terms of the experiences that I could have at MIT, so that's another reason why I chose it.
Okay.
To answer your other, sorry.
Yeah, go on, please.
To answer your other question about mechanical engineering, I was pretty sure that I wanted to do that, or to graduate in mechanical engineering, and just all the opportunities kind of made that very clear while I was at MIT as well. So I think I definitely wasn't as undecided as some people maybe. I kind of had that in mind, but we don't have to choose a major until the end of the first year. So you could go in undecided and then explore classes. I think the best way to find out what you like is to try as many things as possible. So, yeah.
Okay, and just last question as to why. I'm really curious about why you chose MIT as well. I mean, you said all the pros about it, but what were some of the probably the negative side of some of the other colleges which people regard as superb engineering institutions, whether that's Caltech or Stanford or Purdue or Carnegie Mellon? What would you say was just that one thing that sort of, and did you apply early to MIT, and once that was done, you didn't even bother to look into other universities?
No, I didn't apply early decision or early action to MIT. I think I did want to keep my options open. I was kind of interested I had applied to a couple of schools I was really interested in going to, but it really was kind of the experience with the other students that kind of tipped it over for me. And I think that there's nothing wrong with any school. Like I really do believe that, you know, there's a school that's probably going to be a best fit for an individual. And so you kind of have to get to know what are you looking for and what do you want to experience in college. And I think all the schools offer great opportunities, and it's more so like what's a good fit for you, even personality wise. What are you looking for? Some people wanted to be in a smaller college, but I didn't necessarily mind because I had been to a high school that was very small in terms of classes. So I was open to a new experience, and I wanted to be in a city. So there were certain criteria, which like you can't move Cornell from outside of the, of Ithaca. So I kind of like, I wanted certain things like that, but I really liked the other colleges as well that I applied to.
Okay, so now let's move on to the birthplace of Saathi, right? MIT. How did you get involved in that project? I know it came out of the MIT lab. Tell us a little bit. I mean, we're all really curious about. Maybe walk us in a very simple, non-STEM way as to how the idea really developed. And then maybe you can also talk about your moving back to India. But that's a little forward, but let's talk about your years at MIT first. And how did the inception of Saathi really happen?
Yeah. So Saathi basically started as a project at MIT, and it was kind of just more on focus on the machine. So we were looking at making a machine that was producing pads and that could be used in a village setting. And it was kind of a low cost machine for producing sanitary pads. And it kind of had its ups and downs in terms of developing into a company, I think. So I came in at the part of, or at the point where there was kind of some development around the machine, and there was kind of a business plan on paper kind of thing. And I was looking at, okay, how can we take this and make it happen? Basically, execute on the plan. And that's where we ended up applying for funding, and so. That was one of the major components we needed in order to get things started. So we entered the Harvard New Venture competition. And then we were able to have a little bit of seed money to kind of get things going. And that's something where we needed the funding, we needed someone in India, we needed a number of other components in order to kind of get this off the ground, because our main target market was in India. So you can't do too much with that by sitting in the US. So I think that's where it kind of all got started. And we were really looking at the issue that we're trying to address. So we really wanted to make sure we were addressing the fact that only 18% of women in India have access to sanitary pads, primarily concentrated in urban areas. So what can we do to reduce, to increase that number rather, and make an impact.
Okay, and we're gonna dive deep a little bit into the product itself, because that's really fascinating as well. But the first starting point would be for me to ask you, how did you think about moving full time to India? I still remember, I think it was 2012 or 13 when we first met, or 2014. And you had just moved to India full time. You had left your cushy job with Oracle, if I'm not mistaken. So just talk to us through your journey at that point of time, and what was going through your head coming to a new country altogether. A girl working in STEM, you have no idea, and you were going to make impact in rural lives, and set up an industrial unit afterwards, and manufacturing afterwards. But to back up a little bit again, how was that decision? How did that decision go ultimately for you?
Yeah, that was probably one of the well, it seemed like the easiest at the time to say I definitely want to do this, and I think the after the post move, I guess, was kind of the most difficult part. But I didn't anticipate it at all, because I was pretty committed. I was really interested in moving to India, and part of that backstory, I guess, goes back to some of the experiences I had at MIT. So I took a class through the MIT Design Lab, or D Lab, and I went to India for the first time through that class. And it was that experience where I was working in Uttarakhand for about 3 months, really developing. We were actually making these natural dye crayons, because they have pigments that were left over from the dyeing process for textiles, and they wanted to make some kids products with that. And so I was developing the recipe basically for those crayons. And yeah, it was through that project and working with the community that I was really inspired to come back to India. And then it took a couple years to kind of materialize that whole plan, sort out the resources and things like that. But that's kind of how I decided, and had to think a little bit about, if I'm going to move to a new place, what are some of the things that I would need to set up. But I think the moving part, I was really excited about having an opportunity to make an impact. So, yeah.
Okay, wow, that's really inspiring, Kristin. Okay, so moving on to Saathi as a product, walk us through. I mean, I know that these are sanitary pads made out of banana fiber. Tell us about the sustainability part of it. Is that something that came in recently, or from the beginning were your pads, as I read now, your pads are biodegradable within 6 months, around 200-300% faster than all the other pads that are out in the market. Was that always the plan when you started, or is that something that has happened in the last 4 years or 5 years, through the process of integration and innovation again and again, and sort of working on that product? But start us from the beginning, maybe, not from D-Labs really, but starting from maybe how that concept of making sanitary pads out of banana fiber came about. What were some of your findings, maybe, and then moving on to sustainability and what Saathi Pads as a product is today.
Yeah. So we started actually with a machine model. So we wanted to make machines and have those set up at kind of decentralized model. And we quickly shifted to making pads itself instead, and having more of a centralized manufacturing model, because basically we realized that the decentralized model was making it a little bit difficult to maintain quality, to maintain the supply chain and things like that, and making sure that we would have to run all of these decentralized, or check in on all these decentralized units. And so we decided that centralized unit made the most sense to scale, basically. And that's kind of how we came about that. In terms of the product, yes, we did start out with banana fiber at the core, but we really wanted to look at how we could make the product completely biodegradable and compostable, because it was something where we just saw the context in which it was being used, and if you're using a product that has plastics and other chemicals and things in it, they're just going to get into the environment, because when you throw it away, it just will kind of leach into the earth wherever it is. So we didn't really feel that made a lot of sense. It's kind of like when you, I don't know, I guess a lot of people know that Coke bottles, right, are some of those things that end up everywhere pretty much. They're very, very known for good distribution, but then they're not able to collect those bottles back, so you'll just see them basically anywhere. And we didn't want to kind of have that same scenario with sanitary pads. So it's kind of an evolution. It didn't maybe start out like that in the beginning, but we kind of wanted to make sure that these elements were covered because we had kind of a whole system approach to the product.
Wow. Okay. Great to know about the evolution of the product, Kristin. Moving a little bit more to know about Saathi in general. What do you think are your future plans now? We're in 2020, a new decade is beginning within coronavirus. What are some of the new developments within Saathi that you're really excited about for the next couple of years?
Yeah. So our goal is actually to be a manufacturer of all kinds of hygiene products. So besides sanitary pads, there are plenty of other hygiene products that we want to roll out as well over the next 5-10 years. And we have a couple prototypes for some of those products already, so we're pretty excited about that. And I think in terms of our impact, that's one of the things that we're most thrilled about, and we measure regularly. So the impacts are kind of around 3 areas. So we always talk about body, community, and environment. And we want to make products that are good for your body, community, and environment. So kind of looking at the health impacts, the impacts, social impacts on the community, whether it's the farmers that we work with or the women that we work with in our factory or through distribution, and then kind of more the environmental impact. So reducing plastic waste and CO2 emissions. I think those are all things where we see a lot of, essentially as our business grows, all of our impacts will grow. So we're seeing kind of a lot of impact over the next 5-10 years, and that's the part we're most excited about.
Okay. Well, when you start with entrepreneurship, one part is, of course, a lot of excitement. Talk us through a couple of challenges as well, because there will be a lot of high school girls and a lot of high schoolers in general who would be watching this, and a lot of their parents as well. But what would you tell high schoolers, and especially girls, at this point of time? I mean, you have been in Forbes, you have been in one of the finalists at the Cartier Women's competition, and so many more things that you've already accomplished in your life. Number one, of course, what keeps you going? But within that, what are some of the biggest challenges, especially as an entrepreneur, and secondly, as a social entrepreneur? What do you think? People think that, oh my God, when you talk about social entrepreneurship, there is no money whatsoever. So I know I've asked 2-3 questions, but if you can take one about your challenges as a woman and as a social entrepreneur, and just entrepreneurship in general in social entrepreneurship.
Yeah, those are great questions. I think in terms of challenges, sometimes it's tough to know maybe what sparks some of the challenges that we've come across. So I think there's a couple different angles you could attribute it to, but whether it's being female, whether it's being very young, or kind of whether it's being a foreigner, there's kind of multiple angles to different challenges. But I think at the same time we have a little bit of that. I don't know. I think we're a little bit naive in a way, which helps us get through some of the difficulties. So, for example, there were quite a lot of people that said, "Oh, this is impossible. You're not going to be able to do it, and this doesn't make any sense, and no one will buy your product, and nobody wants this kind of product." And so, I think those kinds of like negative feedback can definitely bring you down. But I think at the same time, we had asked women about this product, and we said, they want it, no matter what these other guys would say in terms of the kind of incubator programs and things like that. So in the early days, I mean, now we do have quite a lot of recognition, and we're really fortunate for that. But in the early days, it was kind of, nobody wanted to really support this kind of project because they weren't really confident about it. But I think we had to build that up. So part of that was also through surveys and just proving that this is something that's needed out there. And I think that's required for any business, particularly with social businesses. It could be potentially easier to find that out because basically you're solving a need in the community in a very I guess obvious way maybe. And I think one other question you asked was about can you make it your living, I guess, or a career maybe in terms of social entrepreneurship. So I think that that's something that people are doing currently, and that's our goal as well, is to have this be a sustainable career in the long run. I think there are a number of challenges to getting to that point, finding kind of the right supporters along the way who will encourage you and give you kind of the even the financial support that you need in order to get to the next step. And I think there's also more resources now than there were even when we started as well, that do support social entrepreneurs in particular, that are looking at basically creating that kind of ecosystem. So I think there's definitely a lot more opportunities to get some of the steps laid out and to kind of help you get started.
Okay. Wow. Okay, moving on. Kristin, now this is going to be a little philosophical, but what keeps you going now? I mean, as I said, the last part was also about all the recognitions that you've already received. I'm sure there is still so much more to do. As you said, you're already prototyping a couple of new products. You have sort of figured out that you want to work with three things, which is, as you said, community, people, and the environment. Other than that, what gets Kristin still moving on and determined, even after all these struggles, all these challenges? What is that one or two things that you feel that really you get up in the morning and these are the things, or they could be regular thoughts that you have or certain ideas that you have in mind? I know it's a little deep, but what keeps you going and still moving forward?
I think you actually already mentioned some of them, but one of the things is definitely that we have so much more still to do. So, it's 5 years in, but there's still so many new ideas that pop up of how can we kind of accelerate our progress? How can we make a bigger difference? Definitely it's the kind of the light in the end of the tunnel is kind of the impacts that we'll be able to make at a large scale, right? So once we're able to, have a much larger unit and things like that, we'll be able to really impact that many more people. And I think that's a huge, that's why we started this whole venture in the first place. So that's definitely one of the things that we know we haven't quite reached that goal yet. And even when we reach that, to be honest, there's still, millions more after that. So I think there's kind of a, you really can do this for a lifetime and probably be able to reach everyone by the end of that. But it's a kind of far-reaching goal. But there's so much room to explore with this company. And I think the other thing is having a team. So my co-founder Tarun is a huge part of like motivating me, and we kind of work together with our team and try to make sure that we're able to achieve those goals. So, yeah.
Okay. We're moving sort of towards the last segment of our talk. So again, just wanted to know from your side, what again, to all the girls and to all the sort of young kids who are going to watch this, what is going to be one piece of advice that you can give as, budding entrepreneurs or budding engineers? They must be scared out there that, it's an uncertain world. But what are maybe a couple of things that you feel a budding engineer or an entrepreneur, if you have an idea, if you have something, what are a couple of things that they can do? And at the same time, what's that one piece of advice that you feel after, being an entrepreneur for 5 or 6 years, what's the one piece of advice that you would give them?
Okay. I think for engineering, definitely. I think, well, there's quite a lot of things that you can do. I maybe it depends on the high school environment, but sometimes engineering is not as much recommended, I guess, in high schools. I think it depends on the education as well, but I think with engineering, it's a lot more broad, or it opens your opportunities up more broadly than you might think. Being exposed to kind of different careers early on, and seeing, I mean, I think informational interviews is the best way to find out what do people do as engineers, so you get a better sense of, okay, what am I aiming for, and does that sound good to me? And then I guess it's also very broad in that you can kind of go into whether it's like computer science or mechanical or civil or environmental and things like that. Just narrowing down kind of where your interest area is, so that you know what major you want to take. And I think for career or for being an entrepreneur, definitely having a passion area, so something that you're really passionate about, that you really want to spend pretty much all your waking hours on, or at least for the first couple of years, you really do need to spend quite a lot of time thinking about it, living and breathing it as well, in order to make it a reality. I would say, then kind of you get to integrate more free time into your schedule, but at the beginning you really have to be kind of that committed, because people will be there giving you feedback all the time, whether you want it or not, and things like that. So in order to kind of keep your energy up, or to keep like your persistence in that project, you really need to have passion for it, and looking for kind of that one problem that you want to solve, or you want to address, because solve is maybe a little extreme, like we need to solve problems together with others, but at least address in a significant way. I think one thing that engineers have is this kind of problem solving mindset, and you're kind of trained to do that day in, day out with all the problem sets you do, and thinking about problems and how do you find the solution to those. And so I think that sets you up well in terms of solving problems as an entrepreneur as well. So whether that, I mean, I think for me, like I didn't go to get an MBA, but I did learn how to solve problems. And so whenever I have a problem, whether it's related to marketing or related to something in the product or whatever, it's something where I can kind of work through the problem logically, and then try to find solutions or find the right resources to address the problem. So, yeah.
Thank you so much, Kristin, for talking to us so candidly about everything about your life as a high school girl, to MIT, and to all the wonderful work you're doing with Saathi. We wish you and Saathi Pads and Saathi Care, really, for all the work that you're going to be doing in the coming years. We can't wait to see more and more products out there, which, of course, care about the environment, care about the people, and about the community. So I think those are the three words that we've all learned, or three passion building blocks that I've learned, I've taken from this talk with you. Thank you so much once again. We wish you all the good luck, and we hope to see you really soon in person.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in today for this Big Red conversation with Kristin Kagetsu, the founder of Saathi Pads. I hope you do subscribe to our channel, to the Big Red Show, and to the Big Red Group for more updates and for more inspiring talks as this one. See you next time.